Okay, I would like to thank everybody for attending today. We really appreciate everyone coming down, especially at the last minute here. So I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Paul Atkins. I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator here for Laser Technology. Been here almost 12, actually working on 13 years in a couple months. So I'm just going to do a really brief highlight of our history. It's something that we're certainly proud of, and it'll kind of give us some street credit, we hope, with you folks. One of it, we did a special project for NASA, and they needed, basically a laser that can measure the proximity as they are docking up in to the space station. So it was very successful, and they built about 6 of them, and they were considered standard equipment on all space docking maneuver flights. We also have partnered up with Bushnell. They make we co-created the very first recreational rangefinder. So we've been in the rangefinder business quite a long time. This was actually in the early 90s, I'd say closer to 92. And we're still active today on developing Bushnell's line of recreational rangefinders. We also invented, really from the technology that was used up in NASA, because it did measure proximity as a distance and also velocity for speed. So we've taken that technology and embedded into the very first handheld speed device that competed against radar that, of course, dominated the market. And so we are responsible for the very first speed laser ever created, and are still active in this market and have certainly the most advanced technology in the world. And this is really where we got our start in the professional measurement market. We did a project actually with the U.S. Forest Service, and basically developed a unit that can measure distance, height, have a scope at the top for tree diameters, and this also had an embedded compass inside of it, so you can do offsets, which is an example here that you're seeing. So this is basically the very first reflectorless handheld total station that can integrate with GPS to do laser offsets. So we've certainly come a long way. I'll show you some advancements of where we are today with that, but thanks to the U.S. Forest Service and the consulting, we're able to develop this unit called the Original Criterion. So nowadays we actually have all of that functionality built into one small handheld pocket-sized laser. The styroscope in the back is representing really the core of our technology, which is essentially, it's called true vector compass technology. Once calibrated, which literally takes 30 seconds in the field, you can pivot and rotate this laser to any orientation and still develop a 1 degree azimuth accuracy, which is absolutely still unheard of in anything else out there in the market today. And then this is just one of about 65 patents that we have filed that are active worldwide. So we have a bunch of US and a few international, but we certainly have a lot of patents on the laser measurement technology and also our compass technology and even some mapping software. So just real quick, just going into the basics of our measurement. So all of our lasers have a rangefinder inside as well as a tilt sensor, and some have a compass that I just mentioned. So any one shot taken is going to measure that slope distance, inclination, and if it has a compass, also the azimuth. And then it will calculate your vertical distance and your horizontal distance. It also has a built-in height routine. So basically the height routine is you can shoot any point along, let's say a tree or a pole, and then it's going to calculate that horizontal distance. And then it's going to do 2 more additional shots, the top angle and base angle, and it's going to derive then to the calculation of what the height of that object is. So it's a simple 3-point height routine. Another methodology you can do for heights is actually just measuring the slope distance and inclination and getting that vertical distance calculated to the top and base angle, and therefore you can actually just mathematically in your head add those 2 numbers together to derive a height. This is actually a little bit more, for objects that aren't quite completely perpendicular to the ground, so if they have a little lean to it or something, this is a preferred method. And then what else is unique is our lasers with the tilt sensor are going to be able to calculate what we call a missing line. This is a 2D missing line. So you can get slope percentages, you can get degrees of really any slope. So you just take 1 shot to the top and 1 shot to the bottom, and then ultimately it's going to calculate all these values, but the real value that you're looking for is that inclination that again can be displayed in degrees or percent. This is a 3D missing line routine. This is now incorporating that compass. So now I can take actually any 2 points remotely at anywhere. The other 2D one, you needed to be in a vertical plane. Now you can actually stand anywhere. You can shoot between 2 trees. You can shoot a crown width, 2 poles. Like this is an example for the span or the distance between poles. In the sense, you're just shooting 2 points, and then it's giving me all those value in the calculations in between those 2 points. So just want to briefly go over some products and solutions that we offer. This is a newer product. It's called a TruePulse 200L. It's by far the most economical product we have. The manufacturer retail price is $449. It actually has a rangefinder in it as well as a tilt sensor, so it can do the 2D missing line routine, measure heights, and as well as just distances. It's icon based, and the heads-up display is actually a 4-power magnified scope. Then we have the TruePulse 200/200B. B is just standing for Bluetooth. So this ups the ante a little bit. The accuracy is a little bit higher than the 200L. The 200L actually produces plus or minus 3 feet or close to a meter. And these are more tighter at plus or minus 1 foot in your distance accuracy. That also has Bluetooth. We also have serial port connection. And the magnifying scope is actually now 7 power. And the range, most of ours can range over 3,000 feet, which is certainly more than what people typically need. But the value of that extended range is actually, it can acquire measurements to extremely small targets. It is reflectorless technology, and again, it doesn't require a prism pole or anything like that. Then we have the 360 line. This is where the compass comes into play. So basically, you're going to be able to generate that azimuth. And then the B is, again, standing for Bluetooth, and the R is this laser at the bottom, really stands for ruggedized. So this is the TruePulse 360R. Again, having that 7-power magnification, has Bluetooth, and it's just a little bit more ruggedized for field use. And then the price difference here, we're looking at a TruePulse 360R peaks at about $17.95. This is the TruePulse 200X. So this is another newer model that just came out recently, and this is really upping the ante on your accuracy. So I mentioned before the other TruePulse lines range from 3 feet to 1 foot. Well, this is actually now we're getting down to 1.5 inches or 2 centimeters. So that distance accuracy is extremely tight, and again, this is all to reflectorless types of measurements. The heads-up display is a little bit different. It's an LCD versus, it's an LED versus an LCD. So you have a brightness adjustments on this that can really accommodate to any lighting conditions. The tilt sensor is actually spec'd at 1/10 of a degree versus the other models are 1/4 of a degree. So if you're really looking for a very, very high-end accurate unit, this is really what that's built for. This is a replacement of the old Impulse that some of you might be familiar with that offers that kind of accuracy. And the price is actually the same as the 360R, so you're still looking at about $17.95. This is a true angle, so basically if you're looking to still do 3D positioning, the true angle is a mapping accessory that can attach to the 200X, and it provides you that horizontal angle. So instead of an azimuth reading using compass bearings, this is actually just you zero out at a reference point, and then it then can calculate the degrees from that point. So this is really used for areas that you might be dealing with highly magnetic interference. If you're working next to heavy equipment all the time, like for a log deck and that sort of thing, you could use this device actually to get that 3D XYZ coordinates. So LaserSoft, this is another newer app actually out there. This is really the basics of data collection. We have some bracketry that can align your smartphone up to the eyepiece to the TruePulse, and is generally just basically taking all that raw data that we just talked about of all those measured and calculated values, and just puts it into this app. As you can see here, it's seeing the horizontal distance, vertical distance, slope distance, the slope. This one doesn't have azimuth, but anything you see then through the heads-up display of the laser, then you can actually take a picture of. So it's pretty slick. As you take the one shot, basically, it then automatically downloads all this information to the smartphone app that we just created and takes a picture of it. And then there's other apps out there. We work with a company called Geospatial Solutions. or I'm sorry, geospatial experts. And they have really been in the business for a long time, and geotagging photography with GPS information or metadata is what they call it. So GeoJot is just another app. It does run on your smartphone. It certainly communicates with our lasers, and this really takes it a little bit step further, where they do a lot of post-processing and are able to do a lot of geo-referencing more in the office. So it's a little bit more robust program, but it's certainly, again, you can take images in the field, you can do height measurements, it's going to auto accept those measurements, and then you can later do some post-processing via ArcGIS or even Google Maps. And then we do work with Esri. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but Esri is one of the largest GIS companies out there in the world. And they have a very, very robust mapping program called ArcPad. So it's a mobile mapping program. And what we've done is we've actually built on top of that. So we built an extra toolbar to really streamline the process of doing some laser interfacing. So essentially it's the same thing. This is certainly the far end of the spectrum when it comes to data collection. All this, of course, can be dumped into, again, like an ArcGIS platform, so you can kind of do some post-processing. And then we ourselves built a program called MapSmart, and basically MapSmart is really, it's for the non-surveyors is really how we position it. So if you want to do simple area calculations, that sort of thing, this will accept the data string again from the laser, and you can do really simple mapping, boundary surveying, that sort of thing. We also have a volume upgrade that will take the measurements of a stockpile. If you traverse around, you can collect all the toe marks and the surface marks, and it'll actually give you the volume right there in the field. And then we also have come out with a program called LogDeck. So LogDeck basically will help you calculate the board feet of any log pile. It's a pretty simple, intuitive program. It really walks you through every step that it takes. And essentially, using a 360R, you can stand in one spot. If you have a point of view where you can see the entire deck, you can stand in that one spot and measure the entire deck, enter in some calculations about your deck, and then again, it will then immediately calculate right in the field what your board, is it board volume? Board feet, right. And then this is another very, very unique product. It's called the Criterion RD1000, designed specifically for forestry. And what this unit actually is, it's an electronic version of the old reloscope. It can do diameters of trees. It can also do in and out determinations. It can do BAF measurements. And essentially the value of this is it's all electronic, meaning you can take those scales and not have to be at a set limited distance from your trees. So you can actually use a laser rangefinder, you can measure to the tree, it can actually take a serial port from the laser into this, and then again can help you calculate the diameter of trees. This is, the visual over here to the right is actually measuring a branch, a pretty good sized branch, and measuring the diameter, so you can even use that. It also calculates, it's got a built-in tilt sensor, and so it can calculate if you want to punch in, hey, I want to know what the diameter of the stem is at 16 feet. You can actually start at the bottom, pan up, be at the 16 foot, and then you can then calculate the diameter right there. So it's a pretty unique tool. We'll certainly have an opportunity later today to demonstrate this of those who are interested. And then just a brief brush over of all of the applications, and this is certainly one snapshot. There's many more out there that we certainly market to, and there's a ton I'm sure that we may not even be aware of. Electric utility, so we also have software that can measure the span, sag, and tension, integrating with our laser. Simple GIS mapping, which is again kind of using integration of GPS. We can map out pole locations, that sort of thing. Vegetation management is a really, really big application for us. We have big power companies out there that have hundreds of lasers, and essentially they're using that missing line routine that I spoke of measuring to encroaching vegetation right to the conductor, which is another huge powerful thing about our lasers, that we can acquire measurements right to a conductor. And it's pole inventory, that's another hot application about multiple services on one line, and happen to know the attachment points and that sort of thing can all be done with the height routine within our laser. And then telecommunications are just doing simple site inspections, obviously obstruction mapping, measuring your surroundings and your heights and that sort of thing. And then just construction and mining, we talked about stockpile volumes that you can do. Crane positioning seems to be a hot one now just because of all the OSHA regulations of where those cranes need to be positioned. Going out on the site to make sure you have the right clearance or you have the right load, bringing in the equipment. And then we also have a program called phase profiling. So that's it's a blasting program. So you just measure the rock face in a 2D method, and then our software will help calculate, your drill hole depths and, for maximum burden. In the public works, just for land use planning, facility mapping, again, just kind of integrating with GPS, or you can even establish a point on your map and not need GPS and just and map from that reference point. Emergency response, we've seen an application where they're actually mapping out their vehicles and for like a 911 addressing. So the way that works is just a simple, it's a 2-shot routine. It's not using the azimuth, but if you can actually collect your GPS point, drive a little bit, shoot your target, which could be the front door, drive a little bit further, collect a second GPS point, and shoot back to that door. It does a range triangulation method, and then that software then calculates the GPS coordinate of that front door, which is really important for emergency response. And of course, natural resources. I know Cassie touched base on a lot of applications. Ego management systems, watershed analysis, and these are all actively our technology is being used for all these applications. And then of course, just forestry, just the tree heights is a really big market. Buffer zone layouts, being able to, shoot to a non-reflective material, right to trees. It's a huge advantage out there for efficiency. Engineering surveying for, road surveying, that sort of thing, or sail layouts. You can actually do some really quick boundary surveys using our laser and MapSmart.
Okay, so my name is Cassie Carley, and I'm here today to talk to you about the WRRG grant opportunity that has come through from the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. You may ask yourself why you should listen to me. I'm the daughter of a logger and a third-generation family working in forestry, and when the bubble burst in 2007 and the gas and oil industry pulled out of southern Colorado, we were in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the company I was working for at the time, which owned by my family. And it was like, the skies opened up and the stimulus money came down from the big stimulus project the government put forward. And our Forest Service got $10 million of that and allowed businesses to apply for it, which is another rare thing, that a for-profit organization can apply for a grant. So we applied for it. We had 1 month to throw something together. I had never applied for a grant before, and we ended up being chosen and awarded $1 million for a 2-year project that would pay for contractors, labor, and fuel for the project. From that point forward, once I figured out, the different resources that were available and how to go about getting them and, integrating ourselves into the community, we started applying for grants, and nearly $2 million now I've gotten since then. Now I work as a product manager for Laser Technology. They have a professional measurement division dealing in forestry, and I'm taking care of the software for them, but I still have a lot I can, provide regarding grants and how to get them. So I'm here today to help you weed your way through that process and maybe be a successful awardee for this grant and some other funding resources I'll talk to you at the end. So every grant has a certain number of qualifiers. I would say these are the top 4. First, we'll talk about, am I eligible to apply? Okay, so am I eligible? Well, with the WRRG grant, the eligible applicants are local community groups and homeowners associations, local government entities and municipalities, public and private utilities, including water providers, with infrastructure or land in areas of high risk for catastrophic wildfire, and state agencies such as the State Forest Service, the State Land Board, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife that operate often in areas of high catastrophic wildfire risk. Those are the people who are directly eligible to apply, means their name will be on the top of the application. If you're not one of the entities on this list, which we never were in the past, you would go to these people with your project idea and say, partner with me, I'll help write the grant, you be the actual applicant, and we'll do this project together. In the case of the grant that I've written on behalf of Colorado Parks and Wildlife for the WRRG funding, they are the ones applying, and they have joined up with partners forest-wise who will do the work on the ground for thinning 450 acres, and also Western Wood Products and Silver Dollar Shavings, who will be the portion that will be utilizing the wood in the grant, which is what we're going to talk about next. Is my project idea a good fit? Or can you make it a good fit? So the first thing you do is you read the request for applications that comes out with the grant. It tells you specifically in there what they're looking for the purpose of the grant, and then in your mind you can start thinking about how those opportunities can fit you, or how they fit somebody that you work with right now, or how they fit a partner of yours, so that you can collaborate together and come up with a good solid grant application. For the RRG, the specific purposes are to reduce hazardous fuels, utilize the woody material, and then support implementation capacity through the purchase of equipment, which is a special thing about this grant. Not very often do grants come available that you can use for purchasing equipment directly. So it's an extra special one to talk about today, and the reason why we've, at the last minute, gathered everyone together to talk about it. So in the case of my application, we're reducing hazardous fuels across 450 acres at 25 acres a month with a crew of 4, 2 trucks, and a skidder. And that's what I basically have included in the budget portion, which I'm going to show you later. We're going to utilize woody material by everything that we cut. We're going to haul out, even the 3-inch on the top side material, because it is usually mostly unmarketable, but the grant helps balance that out. That's why the grant is there. And that's going to go into shavings, erosion logs, other types of small, chipped up mulch style wood products. And then on the other side, we're hauling to Western Wood. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife will be delivering it to Western Wood to take the bigger, more marketable, trees, and that helps pay for the 50% of the grant share that the applicant is responsible for. There are some extras. In addition to the application itself, the WRRG requires a few extras. The first one is a letter of support from your county or other municipal officials. That is the minimum that you want to provide. And I went ahead and included mine on here, which is for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, supporting their letter in that county where the state wildlife area is located, for you to use as a template for writing a letter like this up for your county officials. My recommendation is to write the letters yourself for the different people you want to get them from, because they don't have a lot of time, and when you do it for them, you have a higher degree of getting it back signed. So this is the minimum, letter of support that you want to include, but I would suggest getting one from your local Colorado State Forest Service district representative, the co-wood representative, which is Tim Reeder here with us today. A local economic development group is always good. The fire protection district representative is always good, and any other relevant community group in your area that deals in forest management, wildfire risk reduction, and watershed protection. In Southern Colorado, there's a group called the Calibre Range Community Coalition, and they bring together representatives from all of these different groups to talk about how they can get more work done in the area. They're a go-to one in Southern Colorado, at least. Let's see. And then you'll also want letters of support from any of the partners that you include. So in the case of my application for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they have a letter of support from ForestWise, who's going to do the work, and a letter of support from both of the mills who are going to take the woody material. So the next extra the WRRG asks for is a map of the area proposed for work. In my case, it's the Bosque del Oso State Wildlife Area. That's where Colorado Parks and Wildlife is focusing this grant funding for thinning. That map I got right off of their website. I actually could have asked the wildlife technician, Bill Velarde, who's the applicant here for it, but it's available online and it wasn't necessary. Private landowners, if you're looking at working on private land, almost always have the maps of their properties in their possession, but you can usually get it from the USDA or the county if they don't have it already. Or you can draw that bad boy on Google Earth. It's a great tool for this, or your State Forest Service rep will be able to help you go ahead and draw it. Or if you have laser technology measurement lasers, you can draw it with that as well. We have a software called MapSmart that helps with that. Next, WRRG Extra, number 3, is a CORAP map. They want to see a map of the area that you want to work in with the color layer over the top, kind of as you see here. This is the entire state of Colorado, but you're looking to aim your project to the areas that are more red. They want to see project areas be in either high risk or bordering high risk or within, a close proximity to the high risk areas to create buffer zones around those areas. This is a website. I've listed the website here. You can get probably a better map printed out from your local district representative, and they will be more than happy to help with it. Okay, so next qualifier, what kind of match is required? Matching is always the most, scary part of a grant, because coming from a forestry company that's self-employed and family-owned, having real dollars to contribute towards anything is pretty much non-existent. So anytime a grant requires a match, it can be scary. With this grant, it can kind of ward people off from applying. But with the WRRG, the percentage of total project cost that can be covered by the grant is 50%. What is considered in-kind? Well, in the case of ForestWise or MS Forest, we always used in-kind as, our hours for our saw hands on the ground, hours for equipment on the ground, and kind of on the way that you would do it is if you were going to contract to do a real project, so that it includes operator and machine and all the supplies and maintenance that go with it. If we're going to, we would usually use part of that for in-kind because some of that has to be paid for by the grant. So we would say, look, we'll get, use the log loader and the operator and the fuel and all the maintenance that goes with it, and we'll give that to you. And we look at, okay, so this grant is 18 months. So over an 18-month time period, at this many hours a day and this much an hour, total that up and say, this is the chunk of money that's going to be in kind for a part of the 50%. This grant, the WRRG, requires a hard match of 25%. So hard match is always the thing that sends people running for the hills. In this case, if you have a utilization source, like we're going to cut this area, somebody's going to be able to buy this for something. What they pay for that money can be, or for that wood, can be considered hard match. In the case of the grant that I wrote for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the hard match is going to come from Western Wood Products and Silver Dollar Shavings. And they've both written a letter of commitment. Actually, I wrote it. They signed it, saying that they're going to take up to this many loads a month of this material. Additionally, in order to be paid from grants, you need to have your business or entity registered at the System for Award Management and Dun & Bradstreet for a Dun & Bradstreet number. It takes 2 seconds and it's free. So once you have a number assigned to you for those, then a grant can pay you money. So I went ahead and listed those websites there in case you're not already signed up. The budget portion of the WRRG project, this one here is for, there are 2 different applications you can apply with to WRRG money for this round. One is for fuels treatment projects, which is the project on the ground, and that is the budget portion of the application for fuels treatment projects. This is actually the one that Colorado Parks and Wildlife is applying for. So you can see the soft match is ForestWise is giving its log loader time, operator, costs associated for the whole 18 months, and they valued it at $33,000 and some. And then the hard match is listed by the other grant participants, partners, collaborators, through what we anticipate we will get off of 450 acres in our area across average terrain. It usually comes out to a load an acre. So, 450 loads off 450 acres, and then 70%-ish or so will go to Western Wood Products, and 30% or so will go to Silver Dollar Shavings, and those are the smaller, less marketable, less profitable wood. So, and then at the bottom, it wants to know your whole project budget. And if you set it up kind of like I've done here, which this PowerPoint will be included on a CD in the packets in front of you, so you can reference it when you're trying to make your budgets, your totals just have to equal in the top and in the bottom. So, and then this bottom cell showing your total project cost, grant, and matching shares. When you're doing your budget, you always want to keep in mind the cost per acre, because if it gets too high, you will not qualify. You want to try and keep it. Now, this is like people, like if you asked a Forest Service representative like Tim Rader here, he's not going to tell you, oh, $1,400 an acre. You just have to kind of know. If you're getting above $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 an acre for your total project cost, not the per acre amount that the grant will pay for, then you're going to be less attractive to be awarded. So it's good to keep it below that amount. Now, this is the budget portion on the equipment application. So on this application on page 1, there's a box you can check saying this is going in coordination with a fuels reduction application. And if I don't get the fuels reduction application, I will not, this application here will not be, I don't need it. So it lets the foresters that are in charge of deciding who gets this money know that you need both in order for it to work as one cohesive project. So it looks the same as the other one, except for, and your contributors are across the top. Now, if you have the money out of pocket, which rarely we do in forestry, but if you do, you put your entity's name in the top and how much you're going to be able to contribute towards the equipment you want to purchase. And this can be equipment from anything from a piece of machinery to, measurement devices such as ours. You can see our Criterion RD1000 right there. And then if you can pay for part or all of it, all it has to do is be within 25% of your entire project cost. So on this grant, as you saw before, it's asking for $700,000. So even this piece of equipment on the top here, which is around $40,000, chop saw, which speeds up efficiency, fits. And you don't really have to have a hard match or a matching share in it, because it's associated with the other project you've applied for. So in this case, I put it, that the entity, whoever, would be paying for $20,000 of the machine. Or if you're, buying measurement equipment, maybe you can afford to pay for $1,000 of it, or maybe you're going to put it on a credit card, or maybe you're going to get a loan. That entity would be listed across the top as far as where the rest of the money is coming from. And then down here, right here in the equipment line for a total project budget, the grant share that we'd be asking for to make up the difference would be $19,500 for a total of whatever that equipment costs here. Okay, so if you're going to apply for the equipment grant, which is the capacity, it's called capacity building, you will also want to include a letter of support from the financial institution where you're going to be obtaining funds if you're not providing those of your own accord. That's an additional letter of support that I would include if it were, me doing the application. Okay, so our last qualifier then for every grant is what are the reporting requirements if I'm awarded. They don't just give you a whole bunch of money and then walk away. There is a little bit of work that has to be done after the fact to remain in good standing as you progress through the time period of the grant that you were awarded. So for this grant, WRRG, they are going to want to know, probably on a monthly basis, it doesn't say for sure in the request for applications, but that's how I've seen it work with grants like these in the past, the number of acres that are being treated. So, in spring months, you'll have fewer than 25 an acre, which is what the goal is for this Colorado Parks and Wildlife grant. But then in the dry months, you'll get more than 25 acres a month, and you kind of lay that out in the scope of the grant when you're writing it, depending on what your project is. So they want to know, how many acres did you treat this month? How many homes are treated or affected? In the case of this one, it's the entire county, because we're protecting the watershed that supplies the water to the city. So it wants to know the cost per acre for that month. So you doled out X number in grants funds, you received X number from your hard match of your utilizers of the wood, and you kind of average that out and let them know, hey, this is my cost per acre for this month. Okay, so amount of woody material generated. So at ForestWise, or whoever's contracting to do the work, they keep track of how many loads go out, no matter what the property is or whether or not there's a grant. So you refer back to that and be able to let them know, this is how many loads, or how many dump truck loads, or how many semi-loads, or how many green tons were removed off the property this month. The number of jobs created. In here it asks you on how you feel that your application will affect the local economy. It's nice in there to say how many people will be working on the grant project. It helps make your application more attractive. And then monthly you say, these are the number of, this is the way that I affected the economy with the number of jobs that I have going right now, and indirectly and directly to the project. And then the use of any forest products generated. So these loads are going out, well, what are they being made into? And usually for most, contracting companies, that just stays the same. In the case of this grant, it's wood shavings, erosion logs, animal bedding, post and pole, firewood, and some lumber. But most of the trees we take out of the project will not be lumber grade. And then additional monitoring will be carried out for free by the Colorado Forest Restoration Institute. This is the first time that I've seen this on any grant, but it's for free, and they will make sure to follow through with figuring out the effectiveness of the project that was done on the ground as they go forward, and then they'll use that information for awarding grants in the future. Okay, so how to apply. You want to combine your application and extras that we talked about into one PDF file. So it would just be one file that includes this, your letters of support, and your maps. And then you submit it electronically by email to the address listed here. For Colorado Parks and Wildlife, will also copy this other address just in case there's anything weird occurs. That way it goes to both places, and I know for sure it got there. Then they list Kaylee Moore as the person to call with questions. So on the CD that I gave you, the application instructions for both capacity building and fuels treatment grants are on the CD, and the request for applications, which is over both of the types of grants. And if you read through that and you have any other questions that we aren't able to answer here today, she is the representative at the Department of Natural Resources that should be able to answer those questions for you. The timeline, deadline to apply is March 13th. I originally thought it was March 6th, but I just put that as a personal deadline date for Colorado Parks and Wildlife because of the fact that it's first come, first serve, and the sooner you have your application in there, the better. So anticipated award date, if you're funded, is May 5th, which means from that day forward you could start your project and then monthly start receiving money from the grant. And then they want the projects to completed. Any project you lay out, they want it to be completed within 18 months of the day that you start receiving your award. Now, that doesn't mean every project has to last 18 months like this one. Your project can last any sort of time period, like a couple weeks to 2 months to 3 months to the entire grant time frame. Just however it fits in best for you, for what you're wanting to achieve or what your partners are wanting to achieve. Okay, so lastly, none of this matters if you don't keep yourself informed in your local community area. You should be attending local meetings as much as possible, like county commissioner meetings, city council meetings, listening for opportunities, and usually those entities are putting together some kind of fuel reduction plan for their area, and you hear about grants then, and hey, this grant could apply for the county for this goal that they're trying to achieve. You contact these organizations like the county, the city, the fire protection district, the community group that you want to be a part of that deals in your specific type of business, and make sure that you're on the email list for the meeting agendas. That way, you get the meeting agenda, prior to the meeting. You can review it and see, hey, I need to be there this day because they're going to talk about my subject. And you need to join the relevant community groups. Like I mentioned before, the Cleaver Range Community Coalition, they met once a month, and all the representatives from all the natural resource groups, including the Nature Conservancy and the NRCS Natural Resource Conservation Service, State Forest Service, Division of Wildlife, which is now Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they were all there because they were collaborating together with the same goal of how do we reduce wildfire risk here in our area and protect our watershed. And then, all of these things assist in knowing about the possible opportunities in your area that certain grants you might hear about later could be applied to and then you could be a part of. So these are the places on where to look online. These are the places I look to. Colorado Department of Natural Resources, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Okay, so this WRRG grant, I don't know if it'll be available next year, but you just keep your eye peeled to their website and then in time what's available, when it's coming available, and that way you give yourself the maximum amount of time to get your application in. Colorado Parks and Wildlife also does their own grant called Habitat Partnership Program, and that one is, they're small, $1,000 to $5,000, but any little amount helps when you're dealing in forestry. The State Forest Service, the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, the Forest Products Lab, and local community groups, because they're applying and they're going to go and look for contractors and people to carry out these tests, whether you're a contract forester and you can lay out the plot area, whether you are a person that would take the wood and use it, whether you're the person that would actually cut the trees. They're applying for funding, and then they're going to, combine together the resources in their area to get that project done. And you never know when they're going to get it or who they're asking. Okay, so specifically for other funding resources, the Colorado State Forest Service has a page called Funding Assistance. It's right here. The website for it is right below. You check it regularly. Right now, they have a grant available for Forest Restoration Grant Program, which helps protect watersheds. The one thing that's special about this one is they're looking for properties that are within a community wildfire protection plan, or else you're not eligible. So there is one, there are two actually down in southern Colorado that I usually look to try to apply for these. However, there's also a website that will, actually is part of the Forest Service website, that you can look up registered official communities that are within Colorado wildfire protection plans. And then try to partner with those homeowners associations to implement the things listed in their Colorado wildfire protection plan, such as evacuation routes and buffer zones, depending on which way the wind's coming from, to protect their community from fire. Another funding resource that I've had a lot of success with is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Again, a business is not eligible directly to apply, but if you know where you'd like to work in your area, or landowners that would like to have work done, private landowners can apply for these different grant programs or different funding resources through the NRCS, and they can get that money to then pay you to do the work. So, for example, the CIG, Conservation Innovation Grant, they're looking for people who specialize in figuring out how to make unmarketable wood marketable. Like, for example, one of the hot things is biochar, making wood chunks and otherwise unusable wood into biochar. If you have an idea for how to use wood that's not something that anybody else has thought of, the Conservation Innovation Grant is available right now to be applied for through the NRCS. EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, I've gotten close to $1 million for landowners for this. Each landowner that owns property that's forested can apply for up to $400,000 of resources from the NRCS in these different programs. So, they'll come, they'll look at the property, they'll do an assessment and tell you where you need work. Then, you as the landowner, or you as the person consulting the landowner, to say, look, we can afford to do this if you can get this money from the NRCS. It's like a 2-page application. It's very simple. Then you can go ahead and, move forward helping them to get that funding to pay you to put a project together and do the work. While these projects don't directly pay for equipment, they often offset costs that you would have spent doing other things so that you can afford to pay for equipment. WIP, that's another one from the NRCS. It's the Wildlife Habitat Incentive Program. It has to do with brush reduction. It has to do with thinning, erosion control, all sorts of things that affect the wildlife habitat in an area. And then the CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, that one is, there's like 40 different sub-programs to it, and all of having to do with all sorts of things in the environment. A couple of them have to do with, erosion control and watershed protection. Another couple have to do with protecting vulnerable species. Some landowners don't even know that they can qualify for this, and if you make birdhouses, you can teach a landowner how to apply for it so they can pay you to put birdhouses on your property that protect vulnerable bird species. And that one, this one, the CSP, pays out for 5 years. So a certain amount per year for 5 years, depending on the number of acres of the property. Okay, so other funding resources, the Forest Products Lab, they do an annual one for Woody Biomass Utilization Grant. Sometimes this one is focused only for engineering, but other times it's focused on capacity building, like helping purchase equipment to get things done faster and easier, which is something we specialize here at LTI, or to do work on the ground in addition to engineering funds. So I went ahead and listed the websites of all of these different funding resources at the bottom of the page so that you can go back and read about them and learn a little bit more about them. I just want to say thank you for being interested in this, and thank you for being a part of our statewide community on reducing fuel loads in our state and protecting from catastrophic wildfire.